Chile's coastal desert is made up of canyons that break up the mountains going inland from the coast. And each one of these canyons is like its own world. And today, we're going to visit up to 5 of these worlds to see how different they can be. We're going to get to know the inhabitants of each of these canyons and explain why the conservation of each species is important. Getting to one of these sites is more like landing on an alien planet than anything else, each one with its unique landscapes, geology, and inhabitants. Today, we begin our adventure visiting a species that we met briefly in one of the previous episodes, and one that I liked so much that although we hadn't planned to come see it today, we decided to make a quick pit stop when they told me there was another population that existed here. It's very interesting that even when plants of the same species are sometimes seen in more than one of these canyons, as is the case for Copiapoa rupestris, many times they show completely different physical characteristics or phenotypes. That's why whenever I have the opportunity to see more than one locality of a species, I don't hesitate to take advantage of it. I believe the genetic variability that these plants show in the field and also in cultivation is part of the charm that makes them so spectacular. Do you think that this locality of Copiapoa rupestris is different from the one we saw in the previous episode? Let me know in the comments. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are at about 1200 feet of elevation and we've been traveling south of Taltal, and we've already seen some beautiful plants that we're going to show you. We saw some amazing Copiapoa rupestris, and this is the plant that we were looking for a couple of episodes back, Copiapoa columna alba, and its little friend right here, a neighbor, Copiapoa desertorum, that as you can see it's already bloomed or it's about to bloom. It's hard to tell because these plants, like many other cacti, have such thick spine formations that the blooms barely get a chance to open at all. So the pollinators really have their work cut out for them. I guess they have to dig in there somehow and do their stuff. And these obviously beautiful guys that I'm sure most of you already know, they're scattered all around us. There's got to be at least 1,000 plants just within my eyesight right now. So we're gonna go around and show you some of like the better looking specimens. Some of these look a little bit more stressed than others. They start showing fat bellies, and that's just a signal of extreme dehydration or stress. When these plants experience too long periods of drought, they start sort of shrinking, and that's why they form these little rolls on their sides. And when the water comes again, well, they absorb it, but the tissue that's partly desiccated, like the bark that you see at the bottom, doesn't have the capacity to absorb moisture anymore. So it sort of remains as a sign of what the weather's been like here in this region in the past 100 or 200 years or however old these plants are. This area is completely covered by Camanchaca fog in the morning, evening, and nighttime. But right now the sun is just beaming down on us. It's not really hot, but if you go without sleeves or without cover from the sun for more than an hour, you really start to feel it and you start turning really red. So obviously these plants experience and love a lot of solar exposure. Not to say that you want to put your columna albas in cultivation out in the sun, because they're not going to survive. But obviously here in habitat, they're just completely adapted to the extreme changes in weather and temperature and all the other factors that are constantly interacting with these plants. So we're gonna go around this field and show you some of the better looking columna alba, and obviously these beautiful desertorum. This is the first time I see these in habitat also. And in cultivation, they might have 1 or 2 branches. They look very small. So to see a sort of cushion with 100 branches is pretty overwhelming. And these also show incredible variability. Just this specimen that I have here on my right has yellow spines as opposed to these dark gray spines that this other specimen has, and that could be partly due to algae growing inside of the spines, like we talked about in one of the previous episodes, which turns the spines that are supposed to be golden into dark gray like these. But it might also be just a variability of the species. These Copiapoa cacti have incredible variability. We've already seen tons of forms of different species. So the key takeaway here is that the picture you see on the book that says Copiapoa cinerea is not the only kind of Copiapoa cinerea that you're gonna see. Same goes for columna alba, and same goes for all Copiapoa. They show incredible variability of phenotypes, which basically means the interaction between the genetic code of the plant and its environment, which gives it its physical form. So there's a bunch of different forms and a bunch of different looking specimen that may be hybrids, maybe transitions between one species to the other, but it's incredibly fascinating just how different one specimen can be to the next, even in the same locality like we are here. So we're gonna go around and show you some of the best ones, all right? In the absence of another type of vegetation that can withstand the extreme drought, and that provides some shade and humidity that helps germination of the seed of these Copiapoa, it's probably the mother plants of this same species that do the work of the nurse plants, making these cushions grow composed of more than one individual. Each individual will reach adulthood, produce seed of its own that falls and germinates near its base, and a new individual is produced for the colony that forms the cushion. Climatic conditions vary extremely depending on many factors, such as altitude and distance from the coast, since these factors influence the availability of Camanchaca fog. If you are a Copiapoa, the further you get from the coast and away from the heights to which the fog reaches, the less chance you will have of survival. This place, for example, is 400 meters above sea level, which is an optimal height to receive moisture from the fog. But since we're more than 8 kilometers away from the coast, the Camanchaca fog has to be quite dense in order to reach this place. One of the effects of global warming is that the fog has decreased its frequency and also its density, and therefore today it's more scarcer in places like this, and the plants suffer from it, but they can definitely survive as long as human beings can be a little more aware of the importance of these plants and stop taking them from their ecosystem. Now let's take a quick break from Chile and do a brand new segment on the channel that we're gonna call Conservation Corner. On this Conservation Corner, we'll be addressing any and all questions that you leave on the comment section right here on YouTube, and also any you send me via Instagram at East Coast Camanchaca. So we'll be covering topics like watering, light exposure, dealing with pests, and any other questions you guys might have. Just drop them down in the comment section below and you'll see them on the next Conservation Corner. On this first edition of Conservation Corner, we'll be talking about cactus grafts and the branches that come out of the rootstock, like this Trichocereus you see here. You always want the rootstock to invest its resources growing the scion, or the plant that's up top. So whenever you see these branches, you want to remove them as soon as possible. And you don't have to do it like a savage like me. It's better if you use a clean, sharp blade, but the important part is that afterwards you use sulfur fungicide like I am here to make sure that no fungus can land on the cuts and take out your rootstock. Then you want to place the plant away from direct sunlight for 4 to 5 days so that the wounds have time to heal. And you want to do the exact same treatment on these branches since these can be rooted. You want to set them aside away from direct sunlight, and on the next conservation corner we'll show you if these survived and what they look like. Now back to Chile. Plants in the desert are not only important for lovers of cacti and succulents, but they are links in a vast chain that includes all living beings on the planet. They are vital parts of their ecosystems and make it possible for the survival of thousands of other plants and also animals that in turn affect thousands of other ecosystems. Animals like the mystic guanaco, one of the great herbivores of South America, and the largest of the wild camelids of this continent. Currently, the species occupies only 40% of its original range, and it's fragmented into small and relatively isolated populations, so it's already very difficult to see them in their natural habitat. If it's your first time on the channel, welcome. I hope you like cacti. We make nothing but content related to cacti and succulents in both cultivation and habitat to try to highlight the importance of their conservation. Remember, take nothing but pictures from habitat. Unlike other Copiapoa species, columna alba has a fairly expansive range, which means we'll see it in most of this video. But now we're approaching the territory of two other very interesting species. Copiapoa grandiflora, the Copiapoa with the largest flowers of the entire genus, and Copiapoa longistaminea, with the most beautiful new spines of the genus. Just like Copiapoa desertorum, longistaminea forms giant clusters of up to hundreds of branches that can be seen from the bases of the mountains. One of my favorite features of these Copiapoa are their new spines that emerge red and then turn gray as the plant ages. These beauties welcomed us with beautiful yellow flowers, emblematic of the genus Copiapoa. Of all the Copiapoa species we'll be looking at today, grandiflora definitely takes the prize for the most impressive flowers. With flowers that can reach up to 8 centimeters in diameter, they really have no competition. Even though it may not form such big or impressive clumps as longistaminea, we couldn't pass up the chance to come see this otherworldly habitat filled with 100-year-old plants. After seeing such a display, I really thought this trip couldn't get any better, until suddenly we came upon this crest. Not only was its form extraordinary, like the shape of the brain of the Atacama desert, but it also looked to be very healthy. It's always a great surprise finding one of these beauties out in the field, and I hope they can remain here for thousands of years more. It was also extremely gratifying to find many seedlings in this ecosystem, which tells us that it's regenerating and that the population is healthy, and even in the midst of such drought, there's hope that Copiapoa will go on and survive. Of all neighboring plants of Copiapoa, my personal favorite are definitely Eulychnia. These Eulychnia breviflora, for example, can grow to be hundreds of years old, just like Copiapoa, and they live in the driest place on the planet. All desert plants help stop the effects of erosion thanks to their extensive root systems. The roots of these Eulychnia look to be more like trunks, as robust and thick as they were. They also extended for meters around the base of each stem, and interestingly, these roots were seen very close to the surface, since they have to be extremely efficient at collecting even the smallest amounts of rain or condensation from the Camanchaca fog. It's not surprising they have to be really close to the surface. In this last ecosystem, we were very lucky to find a plant that is almost impossible to see in the field. Thanks to poaching and selling of wild individuals, this plant almost no longer exists in nature. And also its form and growth pattern, which is completely flat on the ground, makes it incredibly difficult to find. I present to you Eriosyce esmeraldana, another precious jewel of the Chilean coastal desert that deserves our admiration and care. These plants already exist abundantly in cultivation, and it's completely irresponsible to buy plants that were poached from the wild. In all of our trips out to see cacti and habitat, we've been lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it, to see firsthand the destruction that poaching of wild specimens does to their natural ecosystems. And after seeing populations of some of my favorite plants reduced to nothing but holes in the ground, I decided to make it the mission of this channel to spread awareness of the issue and highlight the importance of never buying plants that look like they may have been removed from the wild. Remember, take only photos from nature. Never take the plants or the animals. What better way to finish this episode than in this endless field of Copiapoa, columna alba. Catch you on the next episode, and remember to take only pictures.